The day of my wedding, I walked down the aisle and saw only empty chairs. My own family chose to attend my sister's engagement party instead. But in the middle of the reception, my phone filled with 68 missed calls. The caterer canceled. "You have to save us." My best man called the night before my wedding to tell me he wasn't coming. I want to give you the exact quality of that moment. Not the emotion of it, because the emotion came later, but the specific sensory experience of standing in the kitchen of the hotel suite I had booked for the night before my wedding, holding a phone to my ear, while the person who had stood beside me through 17 years of friendship explained, in a voice that was thin and rehearsed in the way of someone who has practiced a script and is now delivering it, that he was going to Isabel's engagement party instead. "It's going to be massive," Thomas said. "I can't let her down." I hung up without a word, not dramatically, not with force. I just put the phone down on the counter and stood in the kitchen of that hotel suite for a while, looking at the city lights through the window. And I thought about the morning in 2007 when Thomas had shown up at my door at 6 a.m. because I had called him at midnight and he could hear in my voice that I needed someone there, and he had driven 40 minutes without being asked and without asking why. I thought about the speech he had been working on for 3 months, the draft he had read to me over the phone, the moment where he talked about who I was to him. I thought, that was the real Thomas. This is also the real Thomas. Both things were true. That was the hardest part. I poured a glass of water. I set my alarm for 6. I went to sleep because I was getting married in the morning and some decisions had already been made by other people, and the only decision left to me was what I was going to do with the day. My name is Holden Graves. I am 36 years old. I am a hospitality consultant, the kind of work that exists in the gap between the vision a restaurant or hotel has of itself and the operational reality of what it actually is, the work of making those two things closer to each other, which requires equal parts analysis and the specific kind of diplomacy that comes from understanding that most institutional problems are really people problems wearing institutional clothes. I tell you this because it is relevant, not professionally, but in the sense that my work has required me for 12 years to be the person who absorbs problems and solves them and makes things right, who fixes what other people have broken, who shows up when it's needed and stays until it's done. That capacity, I had applied it to my family for 36 years before the morning of my wedding. That was the morning I stopped, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Catherine Morales and I got engaged in March of 2021. We had been together for 4 years at that point, which is long enough to understand each other's families. And Catherine understood mine the way you understand weather systems that you cannot change but can prepare for, with clarity, without illusion, and with the specific kind of love that accepts the whole picture rather than the edited version. We chose a venue, the Langham, a hotel with a ballroom and a garden that Catherine had fallen in love with in January, on a Sunday afternoon visit that she described to me that evening with the particular warmth of someone who has found the right place and knows it. We set the date. We sent the invitations. My mother called 2 weeks after the invitations went out. "Holden, some of your father's family have conflicts. Italy in June is impossible for them." "Then they won't come," I said. "They want to come," she said. "You need to accommodate them." I did not need to accommodate them, but I did, because I was the kind of person who accommodated, and because Catherine, when I told her, said, "If it matters to you, it matters to me." 1 year. She said it without resentment, which is who Catherine is. Generous in the specific way of someone who has chosen generosity as a value rather than a performance. We rescheduled. New date, June of the following year, new invitations. The venue accommodated us, which cost a rescheduling fee I will not detail except to say it was not trivial. 8 months after our rescheduled invitations went out, my sister Isabel got engaged. I was happy for her. I mean that without qualification. Isabel and Marcus had been together for 3 years. Marcus was a decent man who treated her well, and an engagement is a genuinely good thing that deserves celebration. I called her the evening she announced it. I told her I was happy for her. 3 weeks later, she announced the date of her engagement party, the same date as my rescheduled wedding, to the day, to the venue corridor. She chose a restaurant 10 minutes from the Langham, which is the kind of proximity that doesn't happen by accident. My mother called. She didn't realize. My mother said, "Mom," I said, "these things happen, Holden." "She has the invitation pinned to her refrigerator," I said. "I've seen it there twice." My mother was quiet in the way she gets when she has decided that silence is preferable to defending the indefensible directly. "It's complicated," she said. "It's my wedding," I said. "You can't be in 2 places at once," she said, as if I were the one presenting the scheduling problem. I told Catherine that evening. She sat with it for a moment. "Are people actually going to go to the party instead?" she said. "I don't know yet," I said. "We found out in pieces over the following weeks, in the specific way that information arrives when families are making decisions they are not comfortable delivering directly. Aunt Patricia was sorry. She'd already committed. Thomas's parents were flying in from Spain for the engagement party, not my wedding, Isabel's party, and Thomas felt he should be there. My father's brother was going to try to make it to both, which we both understood to mean he was going to the party. The chairs began emptying before the wedding started. 2 weeks before the date, I called my mother to confirm. I want to be precise about why I called. Not to fight, not to change anything. By that point, I had understood that the configuration had been decided by other people's choices, and that my role in those choices was to have my wedding either way. I called because I needed to hear it directly, without the softening of third-hand information, so that I could know it completely and put it somewhere accurate in my understanding of my family. Holden, it's really complicated, she said. The specific sigh of someone who finds other people's expectations exhausting. Thomas's parents are flying in from Spain. This is significant for Isabel. Mom, I said, it's literally my wedding day. Thomas is like a son to us, she said. His parents coming is a major thing. I let that sentence land without comment. Thomas was like a son to them. I was their son. These were different categories, apparently. And Dad? I said. Your father and I will be at the wedding, she said, with the tone of someone announcing a concession rather than stating an obvious fact. I thanked her. I said I was glad. I hung up. I sat in my apartment, and I thought about the shape of what was happening, not with anger, not yet, but with the specific clarity of someone who has been practicing willful blindness for a long time and has just decided to stop. Isabel had done this on purpose, not impulsively, not carelessly, deliberately, with knowledge of the date and the invitation and the year of rescheduling we had done for the benefit of people who were now going to her party instead. She had placed her event in direct competition with mine and had trusted, as people who have been accommodated their whole lives trust, that I would absorb it. My best man had chosen to attend my sister's engagement party over my wedding, had told his parents, who were flying from Spain, that this was the event worth attending, and my mother had looked at all of this and had decided that the appropriate response was, it's complicated. I called Robert Sterling. Robert and I had met 11 years ago when he was a 24-year-old with a catering concept and no operational infrastructure, and I had spent 4 months consulting for him at cost because I believed in what he was building. The business was now one of the most reputable event catering operations in the city. He had told me on more than one occasion that I was the reason it existed in the form it existed in. We spoke every few weeks. I had been to his daughter's birthday party 3 months earlier. Robert, I said, did my mother hire you for anything recently? A pause. She inquired about availability for a June event, he said carefully. She said it was for your wedding. It's not, I said. Or, I should say, she may be using my booking relationship with you to secure catering for my sister's engagement party on the same day as my wedding. A longer pause. I see, Robert said. I'm not asking you to do anything, I said. I just wanted you to know the full picture. Thank you for telling me, he said. I'll look into it. I did not hear from him again before the wedding. The morning of my wedding was clear. The kind of June morning that makes June worth waiting through the previous 11 months for. Sky that specific blue, air that hasn't committed to heat yet, the city doing its Saturday thing below the hotel window while I stood with my coffee and thought about Catherine, about the way she had looked at me when I told her about Thomas. Not with the appropriate devastation of someone whose wedding was being sabotaged, with the specific practical intelligence of a woman who has assessed a situation and decided what it requires. Your family chose where they want to be, she had said. Now you choose. That was Catherine. That was what I was marrying. My cousin Sarah had flown in from Atlanta. She was one of 7 family members who showed up. The rest had chosen Isabel's party or had developed conflicts that were convenient in their timing. The empty chairs were in the 3rd and 4th rows. I want to tell you what it looked like because I think the image matters more than the count. 22 people in a ballroom designed for 100. Catherine's family filled their side completely. Her parents, her 3 brothers, a collection of cousins and friends who had driven from different cities because Catherine is the kind of person who produces that kind of love. My side had Sarah, my parents, a handful of colleagues, 3 friends from university. The empty chairs were not scattered. They were concentrated in the specific rows where family sits at weddings, the rows that mark where someone comes from, the rows that say these are the people who made me. They were there, and they were empty, and every time my eyes moved to them, something tightened in my chest, in the way that things tighten when you are trying not to feel something, and the something is not cooperating. Catherine walked toward me, and I thought, she is walking toward empty chairs, and she is doing it without flinching, and that is who she is. I held her hand. I said the things you say. I meant all of them. We had champagne in the garden afterward. Her father made a toast that was funny and warm and exactly right. My father made a toast that was shorter than I expected and more genuine than I had feared. Sarah cried, which was the correct response. At 4:47 p.m., during the cake cutting, my phone vibrated. Once, then 4 more times in rapid succession. I glanced at the screen and saw my mother's name and put it back in my pocket. It vibrated again and again. I was aware of it the way you are aware of something small and persistent that is trying to become something larger. My colleague James, who had been watching from across the room, caught my eye and gave me the specific look of someone who is about to tell you something you should know but doesn't want to tell you at your wedding cake cutting. I excused myself to the garden at 5:15 p.m. I had 52 missed calls. I stood in the garden of the Langham on my wedding day and looked at the number 52 and thought, something has happened. My cousin Sarah found me 2 minutes later. She was holding her phone and she had the expression of someone who is the bearer of news they were hoping to not have to deliver. Call me, she said. Don't tell anyone I told you. I called. She answered immediately. Your mother is telling everyone at Isabel's party that you scheduled your wedding on this day specifically to overshadow Isabel, she said. Her voice was low and precise, the voice of someone who wants me to hear each word correctly. Thomas is telling people you never actually wanted him as best man, that you only asked him out of obligation. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify is linked in the description. The garden was very still. And, she said, Isabel's caterer just canceled. Your mother wants you to call Robert Sterling. I stood in the garden of my own wedding reception with a phone in my hand and 52 missed calls, and the information that my family was, at this exact moment, rewriting the story of the day in a room 10 minutes away, while simultaneously trying to extract a favor from me to solve a crisis they had created. I thought about Robert, about the conversation we'd had 2 weeks earlier, about the pause. My phone vibrated again. 68 calls total by the time I stopped counting. I looked up. Catherine was standing at the garden door in her wedding dress, barefoot, holding her heels. She looked at me with the expression she uses when she has assessed a situation and is waiting for me to tell her what I already know. Tell me, she said. I told her everything. Not a summary. Everything. The calls. The message from Sarah. The narrative my mother was building in that restaurant 10 minutes away. The request to save Isabel's party by calling Robert. The timeline. The group chat Sarah had mentioned but not yet shown me. All of it. Catherine listened without interrupting. When I finished, she held out her hand. Give me your phone. She turned it off. She put it in her bag. She took my hand. Your family chose where they want to be, she said. Now you choose. We went back inside. We danced until the venue closed at 1 in the morning. Catherine's brother Marcus made everyone do a dance he'd invented at college that nobody knew, and that became the best moment of the night. Sarah did something complicated with the champagne that she will deny if you ask her. My father danced with Catherine in a way that made her cry, which was the right outcome. At 1:17 a.m., I put my wife in a car to our hotel. At 1:18 a.m., I turned my phone back on. 147 messages, 23 voice notes. I stood in the lobby of our hotel and scrolled through the list with the specific calm of someone who has made a decision and is now reviewing evidence that confirms the decision was correct. The first voice note was my mother, hysterical in the specific way she gets when a situation has escaped her management. Not grief, not worry about me, but the operational distress of someone whose plan is failing. She needed me to call Robert. Isabel's party was in crisis. The caterer had walked out at 7 p.m. Guests were hungry. Marcus's parents had flown from Spain. I want to stay with that for a moment. At 7 p.m. on my wedding day, while I was dancing with my wife, my mother was leaving me a voice note asking me to use my professional relationship to rescue the engagement party that had been deliberately scheduled to compete with my wedding. I listened to all 23 voice notes. Then I called Robert. He answered on the second ring. Holden, congratulations, brother. How was the wedding? Beautiful, I said. Robert, why did you cancel on Isabel? He sighed, not dramatically. The sigh of someone who has made a decision they are at peace with and is now explaining it. When your mother first hired us, she told me it was for your wedding, he said. I took the booking because of you. Not as a favor exactly, but because of who you are to me. Then I found out it was for your sister's engagement party. Same day as your wedding. He paused. 3 days ago, she called me to tell me that Isabel's event was more important than yours because Marcus's parents were coming from Spain. She said that very directly. What did you say? I said. I returned their deposit and walked away, he said. It wasn't revenge. It was dignity. Another pause. I'm sorry it affected your sister's evening, but I'm not sorry I did it. I told him I understood. I told him the wedding had been perfect. I told him we would have dinner soon. Then I went to sleep. 3 days later, I met my cousin Sarah at a coffee shop on Forsyth Street. She had a folder. Sarah is 34, an attorney in Atlanta who specializes in employment litigation and who has the specific quality of someone who knows how to assemble evidence into a coherent narrative. She had driven to the city for the wedding and had stayed for reasons she didn't explain until she sat across from me with a coffee and the folder between us. I need you to see something, she said, and I need you to understand that I'm showing it to you because you deserve to know, not because I want you to do anything with it. She opened the folder, screenshots, a group chat, the name at the top, Isabel's commitment. I read them slowly. Isabel, 8 months earlier, the week after we had sent our rescheduled invitations. If we schedule my party on the same day as the wedding, the family will have to choose between us. Let them. My mother, in response. Thomas's parents are coming from Spain. That's more important than his little ceremony. Isabel. Besides, who's actually going to notice if we skip his wedding? My mother. He's strong. He always overcomes everything. He'll be fine. I set the screenshots down. I picked up my coffee. I drank it. There's one more, Sarah said. She turned the page. Isabel. Thomas says Holden will forgive us anyway. He always does. I sat with that sentence for a long time. Thomas had known. He had been in the group chat. He had told my sister 8 months before my wedding that I would forgive them. He had not just abandoned me on my wedding day. He had placed a bet on my forgiveness before the betrayal had even been executed. He had bet against me. I thought about the voice at 6 a.m. in 2007, the 40-minute drive, the speech he had been working on. I thought about both versions of Thomas and understood, sitting in that coffee shop, that this was the defining version, that the other one, the loyal one, the friend who showed up before dawn, had been real, and that this was also real, and that I was allowed to choose which one I was going to carry forward with me. Thank you for showing me this, I said. What are you going to do? Sarah said. Nothing. specifically, I said. I just needed to know. That evening, I blocked Thomas's number, not with anger, with the specific quiet of someone who has understood something completely and has made a decision that does not require additional explanation. Some betrayals do not need a conversation. They just need distance, and the honesty to call the distance by its right name. I want to tell you about the leak because I was not responsible for it, and I want that on record. 1 month after the wedding, the screenshots entered circulation, not through me, not through Sarah, who had given them to me in confidence, and who I believed then and believe now would not have released them without telling me. The best reconstruction Sarah and I were eventually able to piece together was that an aunt, my father's sister Renata, who had attended my wedding and who had a long and complicated relationship with my mother that predated my existence, had somehow obtained the screenshots, possibly from someone else in the chat, and had forwarded them to several relatives with the specific judgmental energy of someone who has been waiting for a situation to clarify itself and has finally received clarification. From those relatives, they spread. I watched this happen from a distance, on my phone, in the evenings, without inserting myself. The family narrative that had existed for the previous month, the one in which Holden had scheduled his wedding to overshadow Isabel, in which he had never really wanted Thomas as best man, in which his behavior was the cause of the family's difficulty, collapsed overnight. What replaced it was simpler and more accurate: a sister who had deliberately scheduled her party to force a choice, and a mother who had called her son's wedding his little ceremony in a group chat that included his best man. The family group chat became very quiet. My mother called me 3 times. I let them go to voicemail. The voicemails described the leak as a violation, as an attack on the family, as something I must have orchestrated. I listened to all 3. I responded to none of them. Then Marcus called, Isabel's fiancé. He called from what sounded like somewhere outside. I could hear wind and the specific ambient quality of someone who has stepped away from a building to make a private call. His voice had the controlled quality of someone who is managing something large and has decided that managing it requires hearing a specific piece of information directly. Holden, he said, the screenshots, are they real? Yes, I said. A pause. Isabel told me that you scheduled your wedding on that day to ruin her party. That's been the story since June. My venue was reserved 8 months before you were engaged, I said. The reservation confirmation has a date on it. The invitations went out before you proposed. You can verify all of that if you want to. Long silence. I didn't know that, he said. Now you do, I said. I did not tell him what to do. I did not editorialize. I did not suggest a course of action or describe what I thought of his fiancé or offer my perspective on their relationship. Marcus was a decent man in a situation he had been misled about, and the information he needed was the factual information, not my feelings about it. I gave him the facts. 2 weeks later, Sarah texted me. Marcus postponed the wedding indefinitely. I read the text. I put my phone down. I thought about Marcus, about the specific difficulty of discovering that the story you have been told about someone is the inverse of what actually happened. The difficulty of reassembling your understanding of a person you love using accurate information rather than the version you were given. I felt something for him that I did not feel for Isabel or my mother. Not sympathy exactly, something more like recognition. I knew what it was to have a story told about you that was designed to preemptively discredit you. I knew what it was to have the people who were supposed to protect you choose instead to use you. I hope he is doing well. I have no way of knowing. 4 months after the wedding, Catherine and I are in the apartment that is now officially ours. We moved her things in the week after the honeymoon, and the process of integrating 2 lives into one space has produced the specific pleasant chaos of 2 people who love each other and have different opinions about where bookshelves should go. We have resolved the bookshelf question. The bookshelves are in the right place. I have not spoken to my mother since the voicemails in the immediate aftermath of the leak. She sent a letter in August, handwritten, 4 pages, which I read twice and filed. It described her actions as motivated by love for Isabel, by the complexity of managing multiple children with competing needs, by the difficulty of my situation being what she called straightforward compared to Isabel's. My situation was straightforward. My wedding was straightforward. I was straightforward. I have held that description in my mind and thought about what it means. What it means to have been so consistently reliable, so consistently the one who overcomes, so consistently the one who can handle it, that your wedding becomes straightforward while your sister's engagement party is significant. The invisibility of capability. The specific tax that is placed on people who have demonstrated, across decades, that they can absorb what is required. I called my father in September, not to discuss what had happened, to talk in the way we had always talked before everything, about football and the restaurant he'd been wanting to try and how the consulting project I was finishing had gone. He answered with the slightly wary quality of a man who is not certain what kind of call he is receiving and who relaxed, incrementally, as the call turned out to be what it appeared to be. We spoke for 37 minutes. Before we hung up, he said, "I'm sorry, Holden, about the day." "I know you are," I said. "Your mother." "Dad," I said. "I don't need an explanation. I just need you to know that what happened had a cost, and that I noticed." He was quiet. "I know," he said. "That was enough. For now, it was enough." Thomas has not contacted me since I blocked his number, which which is the correct outcome. When someone places a bet on your forgiveness before executing the betrayal, the right response is to remove the financial instrument. The bet doesn't pay, the account closes. Some friendships reveal themselves as something else under sufficient pressure, and the revelation is information rather than catastrophe. Painful information, real information, but information you are better for having. Robert hosted us for dinner last month. His wife made something with sea bass that Catherine is still talking about. His daughter has started asking questions about the restaurant business, which Robert finds simultaneously flattering and alarming in the specific way that parents find their children's career interests alarming when the career in question is the one they know best. I told Robert what I had learned, that my mother had tried to leverage my relationship with him, that she had called Isabel's party more important than my wedding directly to him, that he had returned the deposit and walked away. It was the right thing, he said. I know, I said. Thank you for having dignity when I was too busy getting married to have it for myself. He laughed. Catherine laughed. The sea bass was excellent.